PCP, we'd have a sacred fire there, there would be an exchange of teachings, and this was kind of an outreach and awareness project for a community that was multicultural. And while we were there, Richard was asked what he wanted to present that year, and he said, well, I think I'm going to do the bow drill. And so we put that in, and of course the outline comes out saying what's going to be offered. And Richard's flipping through, he says, hey, there's another guy doing bow drill. He's on the environmental side of things. I'm going to go check his stuff out. So Richard went to check Skeet out, and Skeet had meanwhile saw the thing and went, hey, there's another guy doing bow drill at the Aboriginal Circle. So he went over there and checked out, and kind of the rest is history. So we have a very supportive relationship we're trying to build with them in terms of they are an adult-based school. So they are reaching out to people. They target a lot of people in the cities that are interested in learning that basics, and because they're not connected with nature, sometimes they don't know what's going on, or sometimes they do know what's going on, but they don't know what to do. So this is a 1 week, usually intensive, they call Empowering Ancient Ways, that they run for 1 week in the spring. And Richard and I have gone out to volunteer with them. We actually did the course, the first year we went, we actually did the course just like everybody else. And then that helped to serve as a reminder for a lot of my upbringing and things that I was like, oh yeah, I forgot that. So that was kind of neat. And then we came back as volunteers, and now we take our group of kids that we work with whenever we can up to the Trackers Club once a month, where they do bushwalk and tracking, practice skills in the afternoon, and that's to in part bring community. There's also a gathering they have every year called Headwaters, and it's basically where a community of people come together for 3 or 4 days. Last year we had a sacred fire there, and
that was the first time.
That was the first time for Headwaters. And it's, again, skill building, but it's also community building with that intent. And then the other part that they are associated with is then the greater event that occurs, which is the art of mentoring. It's a much larger movement that's brought in from John Young and in the States. Sticks and Stones is a very big part of it. They take their apprenticeship people who've been in their program, and they bring them to the art of mentoring to help with the camp programs for the different age groups and all that kind of thing. So that's kind of to give you an idea of why you'd be watching this. But I thought it would be interesting, it's a 6-minute video about kind of what they do. And when they were filming this, I think you and I were there for that one.
Our kids were, yeah.
Some of our kids, we were the first crazy people, I think, to bring our kids there, like our teenagers and stuff. So, but this is the adult piece. And then there is the Pine Project in Toronto. And the Pine Project in Toronto is a camp that runs during the summer for kids of different ages. And Andrew is in charge of part of that team down in the Pine Project, and they do a lot of that piece of the mentoring piece with kids and getting them out in the bush and getting them comfortable with it and learning about the principles of kindness, learning about the principles of getting along. The art of mentoring as a movement is very based on like a peacemaking model, even though it's not always in a Thanksgiving model. But it comes from many different traditions. John's kind of gathered different traditions through the years and through his teachers. So I thought it would be relevant just to kind of get an idea of what people's responses are.
Oh, just tap it.
Awesome.
Well, underneath those first two toes.
And this is a white-tailed deer hide.
Taste and drink that. Do that. So if I just add that here. But they can be very prolific and scattered.
My name is Bill Clark, and I'm here at the EAW in the Beaver Valley this year for the third time as a volunteer. So it gives me an opportunity to participate and support the activities of Sticks and Stones Wilderness School, but also to learn more about skills, outdoor skills, wildlife skills, nature connection. The times I am absolutely the happiest is when I'm out of doors, listening to the birds, feeling the breeze on my face, and knowing that anything can happen any minute. To see a rabbit, to see a pheasant, to hear a hawk, a new flower, a snake coming past. All these possibilities are out there.
My name is Jody Johnston, and I'm a teacher. So I'm here to soak up as much knowledge as possible and learn and grow as an individual, but then also pass that forward to my students, because this is becoming part of their program, but it's also a cultural and more of a heritage piece as well. So it's going back to our roots. I've been going down this path a really long time, and it means a lot to me. And I think the more that I'm able to soak up and understand, and then be able to teach it to them, then they're going to be able to carry that forward. And then how they're mentored, they'll grow up mentoring others the same way. So it's really important.
How important is this coming out here at this point in your life?
Extremely important that I came out here. I feel like if I didn't, then I would have just kept being in the same rut or the same routine that I was always in, just, I'm not going to say mediocrity, but just going through the motions. And that's not what I wanted to do, but I guess in everyday life you fall into that kind of state. I feel like everything is so expected. You're expected to go to school, expected to go to college, expected to get a job. Whereas out here, it feels right to be here. It feels like I belong.
Red pine needles, which are, at the most maybe this long, so that's a lot of splicing that has to take place. I think being a female and having these skills is really important, and it's played an enormous role in my life. So I've always wanted to know how to do things and how to do them for myself, and that, I think, builds your self-confidence, but your self-esteem and perseverance, and a lot of character traits that are really important for people. My parents always taught me not to be a princess, to work through things and push through it, because princesses need to be saved. And in some situations, you may need that, but to have those skills, you can call on them yourself. So I think that's extremely important.
And they're actually not nearly as tiny as you think. I don't know if anyone want to try that little guy. And now we know the moment in time when the deer and the human saw each other.
And the thing is with Skeet is that he won't answer your question. He'll ask you more questions. He might answer one, but in the meantime, he'll ask you 2 or 3 more that spark your interest, that makes you want to go find out what that bird was or what made that sound.
So my question to each and every one of you is, what is it that calls you? What draws your heart to act the way you do? And if that is out of doors, which I would be surprised if it doesn't apply to each and every one of us, then there are opportunities in Ontario for people to come to a weekend event, even daily events at Sticks and Stones Wilderness School, and feel for yourself, experience for yourself, what is it that catches your attention and creates wonder and curiosity the way each of us was when we were 5, 6, and 7 years old. So I put that out there as an invitation to give it a try and see how that enhances your life.
Just tap it.
There we go. Awesome. So that's kind of into the middle of it, but I wanted to kind of start with that just in case the technology piece doesn't work. So I've had a chance to kind of in and out talk to you guys throughout the last few hours, a little bit last night. And I kind of want to go back and start at the beginning to give, some of you may have heard bits and pieces of it, but it will help to clarify things. So my story starts in the Northern Isle of Scotland, where I was born on a 11-year business trip of my father and mother's, where they were working my father was working in the Man Orbiting Laboratory program for NASA. This is long before they actually made it out into space. And what they were doing was they were attempting to work with the UN to come up with relief for third world countries in terms of food production, because we were in droughts, we were in concern about nuclear issues, and generally just we were becoming aware of rainforest deforestation and how that affected things. And this is like, just the beginning, before blue boxes, so to speak. So at that point, when I was a little girl, I'd be running around and there were these really strange pink greenhouses in our backyard. And lots of people that would come and grow. And if you went into one of those pink greenhouses, you would have found passion fruit growing in the Northern Isle of Scotland. So my dad earned a reputation for pretty much being able to grow anything, anywhere, anytime. Now, what it took to do that was a different story, because sometimes it was not very hospitable or easy to do. So that's where I started. When we came to Canada, we went through a series of different places getting settled here. And as a result, we finally ended up settling in a small farmhouse. We actually had 3 properties, and it became a biodynamic farm first, and then an ecodynamic farm. And what we were doing was we were teaching, through some partnerships with Conestoga College, we were teaching people how to grow in enclosed environment cropping, so that if we had an environment that was not able to support growing our food, we had a solution. And we did a lot more than that. We worked with repairing the land. So, okay, we're growing, our food's growing, and we're going to be safe, with our food production here. Now what do we do about helping the land? So using the technology in a way to start contributing to helping. And one of it was to help purify some of the water. So we had some water purification that we were working with research-wise. We had some energy alternatives we were trying to work on at the time. And then our longer-term plan was that if the water is cleaner, that of our wastewater being cleaner than what's been going in, then that's going to improve the environment. And if we use the land that would have been used for food, then, to do trees, then all of a sudden we're starting to contribute back. So it was very much a not fighting against. We're not pushing against what's going on out there. We're just saying we, through our life, through our journey, is going to do something that helps to contribute to some kind of an improvement. And the books that came out in the last 20 years about water and homeopathy and the understanding behind that. So now we look back and we go, hey, we were kind of on the right track, because the more that the water was pure that we were putting out, it has an effect in a far-reaching way. The fact that the land was going from being saturated with atrazine to becoming a little bit every year more and more healthy, to the point where we would hope to supply tree seeds and get trees going so we could take that land back to a more treed environment and just increase and improve that health, let things go back into some kind of a balance. And that was kind of where we were going. Trick was, we were a research team that was very stretched for resources. We were trying to do a lot of different things at once, and one of the things that my dad really focused on was health. And so he had, through the years, come up with some very creative connections to helping to work with cancer and AIDS. And they're through different methods. I mean, some came from Quebec, there was 714X, some came from the States, some came from indigenous knowledge, some came from some chemists that had some pretty incredible dreams that led to substances that could help with that healing process. But he got to the point of recognizing that there really wasn't anything that didn't have a solution, except people's willingness to change. And so that's kind of where my big journey started. When I first worked on the farm and I was a contributing member to that community, and I did what I could. Eventually I was the products and services manager for them, doing partnerships and bartering exchanges to try to keep that community going and helping with it, because it was about 100 acres. And when all was said and done, we hit a time where the government shifted and a lot of our funding got cut. And then we got really strange because we were making things happen that other people didn't kind of like happening. So eventually we ended up losing the land, at which point I decided to go back to university. And when I went back to university, my question was, I had watched several communities that my dad had started, and they had built up, and there was lots of amazing things happening, but they wouldn't sustain. And I saw a huge struggle in people that were coming from mainstream society, and they'd start coming into this community, and it would be all good for a little while, and then relationship things would come into place, and then different people's perspectives would come into place, and it would work as long as, say, a head figure was there to negotiate it all. But it would fall apart fairly quickly once he wasn't there to hold that piece together. And it wasn't because of a lack of effort or trying on a lot of people's parts. Like, they really worked at it, and they really were dedicated. But it became evident to me that there's something that happens to us in mainstream society, in the schooling system and everything else, that makes it more and more difficult for us to even think like a community and go in that direction. So that became my search. So when I went into university, I focused on the study of how we learn in philosophy of education, the history of learning, and then how we learn brain-wise. So I did developmental psychology, and then into the obstructions of learning that come with learning disabilities and prenatal care and that kind of thing. And then I went into environmental science, and I did sick building syndrome work, because we had a lot of schools, which I had become aware of, where the kids were going to the portables, and all of a sudden they were getting really, really sick. And I thought that's where that, if I cover this, this, and this, yeah, that should be about it, right? So I ended up writing a ridiculously long thesis. I think it was 400 and some pages, 432 pages long. My profs went, divide that down by 1/4, and we'll look at it. So finally, after many struggles, I got through, and I got down to about 100 pages. And they said, you did your work, kid, 90. And that was, I think I was one of 3 women in that area. There weren't a lot of them working in the old boys' school. So that was an interesting journey. In order to get to university, I had some interesting challenges because I was homeschooled. Because of all the traveling that my parents did, and because of some interesting, unique learning quirks I had. Some people call it autistic tendencies, some people call it dyslexia, some people called it stupid, lots of people called it stupid. Some people called it slow, or she's different. So my mom heard enough of this and said, okay, that's it, I'm raising her and just doing this myself. Fortunately, she was a school teacher. She taught grade 1 in elementary schools in Toronto, so I was really lucky. So she retired from teaching and she taught me instead, and then my siblings as well. So I had to force my way through the system just to get to university because they didn't want to let me in because I was homeschooled. So I started to see all these patterns of just how much it's going to take for change to occur. And I wanted to find a very gentle way. And then as I got through that part, I started to see in my own communities, because I do identify as an Anishinaabe Métis woman. So I have Scottish in my background. I think there's some German in there, there's some Irish, and then there's also, my father was raised by a Cherokee grandfather, and my mother's family, as far as we know, comes from Sault Ste. Marie, Garden River territory. And we know there's a few other things in there somewhere that have mixed, but definitely some of the foundational teachings my mom got as a kid, even though they weren't identified as Aboriginal, they had that fit. So I've been accepted into the communities very well, to the point where now I work at Six Nations Reserve, which is the largest reserve in Canada. And it's New Credit is the one part of it, and then there's Six Nations, which is the other part of it. And it's very essence of trying to hold on to its Aboriginal community is really, really hard because it is surrounded by the rest of society. So a lot of traditional knowledge has been lost. A lot of it that is there, you can't find. It's like, we're holding it in there and the people who are supposed to know, and that's it. So it kept. So where I have worked for the last 20 or so years has been with children who have been coming into foster care. And typically, if they come into foster care, they will then go out and be adopted, or they'll go back into a healthier family that's been counseled and worked through issues. But in that whole process, they're up in the air and they don't have any place to call mom or dad. And they go through this transition. So I work with the top 0.5% or top, 0.5% of the population. So these are kids that have witnessed murder of their siblings. These are kids that are destined for group homes because they cannot function in a normal family setting, or kids that have been severely physically, sexually, emotionally, verbally abused or neglected. And they just can't fit anymore with that, and there's too much of a shear. And so our job becomes, as counselors, to try to find a way to heal from that process and then take that healing process and turn what the contrast they have experienced into a gift. And take that gift and run with it. Whether they run with it back to their biological families and hope it goes viral, or if they run with it in their adoptive home, or they run with it wherever the next leg of their journey is, they've got something that's in there that holds to them. So I came up with something a long time ago called attachment to the land theory, which is if a child can't trust a human being, where do I take them? What do I take them to? So needless to say, at the time, I thought this was like extremely a radical idea and very cool. I'm kind of proud of myself. But I learned as I went through talking to different elders, and they're going, so which one taught you that? Nobody. It's like, oh, well, maybe we should give you the teaching. So I've learned over time that this is a very, very old concept, but it's coming up in a different way. And there's not a whole lot of social workers out there that are doing this. So I have yet to find one. So maybe someday I'm looking forward to somebody saying, hey, I do that too. Let's exchange notes. So what we do is we take the kids out. We establish just a very, very kind disposition. We don't care where you have been. We have compassion for it. But to me, to us, it doesn't matter. And my dad used to have this great saying, nothing you have been or done disqualifies you. It only qualifies you by showing you how things work. And that's where I start off with those kids. I don't care if you've hurt somebody, if you've, stole something, if you think you're a rotten person. That's not where my heart's at. I want to know where you are right now and where you really want to go. And if you can't conceive of where you want to go, then let's build that hope up and find a way so that you can have hope, so you can tell me where you want to go, and then let's plot a course together of how we're going to get there. So that is what we do. And we usually, sometimes we're lucky enough we get about 2 years to do this work. Sometimes we get, 3 months? So, and it depends on what we're doing. But what we do in that process is that we're taking the land and we're having them notice and process. So we don't do a normal talk therapy like most people do, and most psychologists, they have them talk about their problems. We don't do that. We go, do you want to go for a hike with us? Cool, let's go. On our car rides, we have a whole bunch of stories that we listen to, and those stories have teaching in them. Some of them listen to them, some of them are staring out the window. It's okay, they're still hearing it. It's still better than last night there was bombing in. So that's what we kind of try to focus them on, is trying to get them to pay attention to what they're creating rather than what they're experiencing. Every moment is a point of creation. Every moment is a point where you can make that choice. So let's make that choice and see what happens. Try it out for 5 minutes. If you don't like it, you can go back. But just try it out. So that's what we work with. And we take them out on the land, and sure enough, as we're walking through developing, and we usually take a specific spot. So we have multiple pieces of land we work with. Some of them I've been walking for over 20 years. And we'll take the kids there, and we'll just walk, and we'll see what they notice. And as they start to notice things, they start to ask questions. And as they start to ask questions, they start to have things happen. And the things that start happening trigger some of the stuff that they didn't want to deal with. But now they're in a different place, in a different space. They feel different. They feel safe. And they start processing it. So maybe it's that one of those children that witnessed a death of a sibling or a parent might see the remains of a coyote or a deer out on that land. And now they have an opportunity to talk about it and to ask questions about what they believe or don't believe. Say, nobody talked about it. All right, well, we can. Sometimes they don't need to. Sometimes it can be years. Sometimes they'll break down in tears right then and there because finally there's some catalyst to make that happen. So as we go through this, we are aware that this is not where the end of the journey is, but it is always beneficial when human beings have spent so much time hurting one another. We got to go back to something. And we know that each child that goes through this process, each adult that goes through this process, is going to develop some kind of a relationship and a connection to nature. And that's going to help them connect to what they really want to do or why they want to do it. It's a whole lot different to say, I want to go start a farm, than I really love the feeling of being here. And I want to stay here. And I want to be a part of here. And I want to help make it continue. And I want to help improve it. And once those basics are established, then there's other things that can come in because we have this wonderful, for this transition time, we have technology. Use it. My gosh, if you want to change a habit, we have hypnosis now. We have brain entrainment that we can use. We have any child that has any kind of brain damage like fetal alcohol, we can take them through a program called neurolinguistic programming. And between neurolinguistic programming, hypnotherapy, deep relaxation, good nutrition, land therapy, we can create new neurological pathways so that kids that were never supposed to read can read. So we use that technology to help them on that physical level of healing. So I have kids that I got at 5 months old and they said this child will never read because they were on methadone when they were 2 days old coming off of withdrawal. And their brain was so damaged they didn't know if they would ever talk. That is my little guy, one of my special little guys. He is now 10 years old. He reads like a pro. He knows how to use the computer better than I do. And he goes wandering, and occasionally when he goes wandering, he forgets where the last place that he stopped was. So a couple times in our life, we've had to have the police come and help us to find him. But he has a life that is extremely rich. He loves being in the bush. He loves spending time with his siblings. He loves interacting with the animals. And he talks, he reads, and he's going places. I think eventually he'll be an architect because he's always trying to build with these block things. There's like a Lego thing on computer, and he can build like a ship. I don't know how he does it. Even if you give him a physical bunch of blocks, like Lego, he will sit there, and like 3 hours later, he's taken a booklet that's this big with instructions. He's followed every single instruction, and magically it looks like what's on the side of the box. And I'm still going, wow, I have no idea. But here's a kid that society basically said, there's nothing going to happen from that because his brain's just not there. So I have come to the conclusion that even though he will always see the world differently, and he will always have a gift from it, there is pretty much nothing that I don't believe cannot be improved to a point where they can find out what's going to work for them. So that's where we run. So we run kind of a little traveling show, running around trying to inspire people who are in community to say, if you've been told these things aren't possible, they are. If you've been told there's no resources or there's nobody out there like you, there are. And there's probably 5,000 other things that we can just say, hey, check this website out because it might interest you. And we try to connect, we try to make connections. And we just try to encourage people to feel like, hey, there's really something going on. And it really is happening. And it's maybe feels a whole lot slower, at least to me. It feels like it's gone really slow. But we have a wonderful community out at home that's sometimes 15 people, sometimes 17 people. I've lost track of the daily fluctuations of people. Right now we have our daughter and our son-in-law and our new grandson, which we haven't seen yet. In there is an added 3 people. And in exchange, we sent 3 of our other kids that normally are there to visit with friends. So we have enough space because we basically pack them in closets. There's not that much space. We have an acre in Brantford, and we use every inch of that acre in one form or another. But we're doing it. We're living it. We're teaching it, and we welcome anybody to come check it out and spend a day with us. People are trying to figure out, like, how do you mentor? Going, well, why don't you come out and help us for the day, and we'll show you how. We have hopes of the last 2 little ones that we had, our miracle babies. We were kind of long past having children, or so we thought. And so we have a 3.5-year-old and an 8-month-old child, and they will be raised the way I was raised. They will be never in a public system. They will always be part of that bush. They will always be connected. And they'll be raised on the stories that our friends and our associates and people that we've heard about and know about have started to share, and they're going to be really cool. And I look forward to seeing where they're going to go with it. And hopefully one day we'll find people who have a piece of land that they want to use for this, or we find a way to generate funding to get a piece of land, because we run on an absolute shoestring with the number of people we support, and we just do as much as we can possibly do. So we're spending a lot of time writing, and we're spending a lot of time traveling around, gathering. We're trying to knit together. I have a unique place in the community where I'm accepted in the Aboriginal community. They tolerate me, at least. And some of them think I'm, pretty cool to hang out with, and some of them are going, get out. So I still struggle with that from time to time. But what we do is I go around and I try to find out if some of the people that are in those Aboriginal communities, and I don't know how much you know about the state of our reserves, but they're really, really awful. They're really awful. A lot of them don't have clean water. A lot of them don't have access to food. If the house burns down, good luck, because some of them have help and some of them don't. Some of them are so far entrenched in alcoholism because it's 3rd or 4th generation. And a lot of them give up because they figure that their kids are just going to get taken anyway, so why bother? A lot of them are hurting, and it's very hard to go in and try and help because it's just too big of a leap. So what we do is a stepping stone approach, and it's like, let's find out where you are, and let's take one little step. I'm not going to be really, really hopeful with you because you're just going to think I'm out of range. So we just provide those little tiny bridges, and anybody who wants to do that and work with that, we do. So what we found in building community that was really, really, really beneficial was that we use these 8 attributes of mentoring. Those are used in Sticks and Stones, they're used with our program, they're used at the Art of Mentoring, they're used all over the world in the Art of Mentoring movement, and in a lot of wilderness schools that are now starting up, including the Pine Project that's in Toronto. And with the Aboriginal tradition, we go around in a medicine wheel. So a lot of our teachings, they have symbols or they have different colors or patterns. So we're kind of translating. But we always start in the East, at least the Anishinaabe do. And we start with the happiness of a child. So anything you can do to inspire people to get a glimmer of the happiness of a child and the wonder of a child, we try to really connect with. The next piece is the abundance of electricity. Getting really excited and passionate about something, anything. I don't care if it's looking at a butterfly out there or if it's that I'm going around and I get to hang out with my wonderful husband and we get to travel all over the place and see these amazing rocks around here and stuff. But there's an electricity, a passion about living. Commitment to mentoring. If it doesn't get passed on, and I look at commitment to mentoring both ways. I go actively out and seek other people who want to mentor me, because I could never possibly learn enough. I know that in my lifetime I will never learn all that I want to learn. I do know when I get on the other side, it'll all come anyway. So it's good. It just has to be fun for the journey, and I learn as much as I can. Empathy and deep nature connection. That deep nature, we're here. We're on this earth, which is, without all of this, we couldn't be here. We're the one species that's dependent on everything, and we're the least grateful for it. We can't live if those trees aren't there. For each of you, it takes a 115-year-old beech tree to supply the oxygen that you need. By the time we're done this talk, they will have been 350 acres clear cut. Just like that. They're gone. I think we better start planting a whole bunch more trees. But I don't want to fight. I don't want to go out and fight. I've had a part of my life that was dedicated to activism, and so did Richard, and I'm sure a lot of you did. It just pushing against it doesn't seem to work, and it causes a lot of hardship. So I know that Mother Earth has its own protections. I have that faith from my understanding of Aboriginal knowledge. There are protections Mother Earth will take, even if it clears us off in the process. But I can certainly contribute in some way or some form. So I do, in every step, in every way, whatever I can do. So that's that empathy that just, you can't help but be empathetic when you get out there and you see things. And how much effort it took. Have you ever noticed these little pineapple weeds? If you squeeze the tops of them, they smell like pineapple. And how much work it took for them to get into the crack of the sidewalk. Like, they really had to work hard to get in there and get up to have that, you know. And most people in society come along. It's changing. There's more people that know this, but, you know, where they come along and spray something on it. It's like, you worked so hard to get there. I hope it enjoyed the journey. But just that empathy, that deep, you start to really feel it in you. It's not just going back to basic native skills or basic ancestral knowledge or something. There's real transferable empathy that comes from that into you and then can go out to you and other people. It's really real. The next piece is true helpfulness. And I learned this in my community, and I've learned it in other communities, where if you're coming to sit for the day or the night, and someone heats their home with wood, and you don't think it might be offensive, if it's on reserve, it's normal. This is something we would do with the elders. You grab a piece of wood on your way in, and you bring it in, because that's going to warm you. You look for ways to be helpful. The 70-year-old grandmother will beat you to this activity. As little ones, it becomes a competition. Can I get to it before grandma does? It becomes a game we play. You know, too often in mainstream society, the kids get to be like a year and a half, 2 years old. They're not entirely steady on their feet, but they're pretty good. And they want to do everything you're doing. They want to help. You know, and a lot of people's response is like, they'll break the dish, they'll whatever, you know. My response, I pull out from under the cupboard kind of like a whole bunch of plastic dishes and I go, okay, let's help. You know, put soap on it. Here, you can rinse them off, you know. But it's involving them, because if you don't push them away then, by the time they're 4, they're helping carrying that wood. Richard has got some great pictures of our daughter, and she's like barely 3, and she's got this great big thing of wood, and she's just doing this, and she's walking in the house, because she knows that's what heating her. It's providing her with connection. But that true, genuine helpfulness is a really big component, that if everybody in a community is working that way, you don't have the fallout that you have in mainstream connected communities. Mainstream connected communities, they're still thinking like they're completely independent, or they're still thinking like there should be this central figure, you know, that gets directions. Don't wait for directions. Find a way to get aware so that you know what needs to help, right? Full awareness is the next piece of and the way this works is kind of like a spiral. So we start and it's like a corkscrew, and it goes down and then it expands, and it's like, there's like 4, 5, 6, there's like 8 days of teachings just on this one wheel, and probably hundreds more. But full awareness and being fully present, being fully alive in that moment, that's a big component of that model. And unconditional love. Too much in mainstream society. You know, love is scary, you know. And that's something we see in the kids that we work with all the time. But we use this model, and sure enough, after we've kind of gotten through all this, we find a quiet mind is capable inside. And that's the really, really exciting part, because the quiet mind goes beyond all these skills, goes beyond technology, goes into a level of consciousness that hopefully some of us will get to see. And if we can get them in that quiet mind, they will get all the other ones easier. Some of them we can't get to the quiet mind yet. We have to go through the wheel. But if we can get them in the quiet mind right away, it speeds up all the other ones coming into play. When we do our social justice piece of things, when we work from an Aboriginal perspective in social work, we're working from kindness. And that's where we start. We really, really, really have to be kind to one another. There's so much unkindness that's out there. And navigate towards that kindness. And when we go through into our next part of our model, it's not honesty. It's kindness with honesty. Saying to somebody, I'm just being honest, you're fat. That's not kindness with honesty. That's not even honesty. Our perception of honesty is really distorted. And again, that teaching could go for days. But it's just to kind of graze that concept. And when our thinking works in that culture, we go kindness with honesty, and we search. When we do our teachings, we search. When we have somebody come to do the fasting sequence, they want to find out more about the fasting sequence that Richard and I support. Very often the response is, if you're interested in this, go watch a hardwood tree for a year and then come back. And we know that if you've done that and you come back, you really want to. But we also know that everything you learned in that year will make that sequence make more sense, matter more, and be more meaningful to you. So when we move with kindness, with honesty, we move into a place of sharing. When we are kind with honesty, that's the point at which we can share. If we don't have those, we can't. The sharing just becomes this disjointed, disfigured competition, hurtful potential. And I sit in many, many, many circles with many, many different groups of people where we're still working on getting that. And we bring kindness with honesty and sharing, and that's where our strength comes from. And then it goes around again in a spiral, over and over and over and over again. And that's our journey. So I know that when I came here, David said there's this really cool group of people you gotta meet, and they're really awesome, and they each have their own journeys and special things, and you're gonna have a lot of fun, and you gotta come. And I went, okay, what do they want me to talk on? And he said, well, you know, you can tell them about the greenhouses, and you can tell them about this, but you'll figure it out. I thought, kind of in a scared way, that maybe what I was coming to talk about was the technology that my father invented, because I worked with him side by side for 25 years. And I learned a lot of cool stuff, but a lot of the stuff we couldn't use because of the state of humanity and where it was at. They just mentally, emotionally, spiritually, communally, we're so not ready to be in there. And so people are going, well, what the heck does this have to do with greenhouses? Well, I'll tell you, if you go far enough into it, you start to recognize that the very thoughts that you think and the very presence that you have and the very nature of you has a very major impact on whether or not your plants will grow. And it sounds nuts. At least from my scientific background, it sounds nuts. But it really does have an impact. And the awareness that you have when you go into deep nature connection is the awareness that will serve you if you want to get into growing in greenhouses and you want to get into different types of taking things into account. There's a thinking that just, it's different. It's very different, but there's a thinking that comes into it. So that was from all the conversations that I had with individuals, I figured was the tightest nutshell way of fitting things together. So I'm totally open to leaving it up to questions, and I'm happy to go into any kind of territory you want to. But you at least have an idea of some of the areas I have some familiarity. Does that make sense?
Go in this chair. Like you, from what I've understood since I've been here, you're talking about community, and the community doesn't all live in one place.
No.
So what is the underlying commonality between the community?
Well, you brought us all together.
A desire to really live in our highest potential, and share that with others so that we can improve the state of the world by living it in a different way. Bringing it back to that compassion for the earth and for ourselves and for the children. And I know for myself, as a young person still trying to find my voice and my path, it's discouraging on one hand, but maybe because I'm not completely jaded in experiences, so I'm very hopeful still that these technologies and these things available to us, in my mind, why not? Why not just do it for ourselves and just be an example of that, and then share it with whoever wants it, and just do it like I have no fear. And yet, though, I still have this cautious, and sometimes this, damn it, it's so frustrating and unfair element. I know this wasn't supposed to be about me, it's supposed to be about the common group, but I know that
We have the same sentiment.
We all, what you speak of, this kindness, this looking after each other, this innate ability to come together as a community is what our community has, and what we have found that we share in common. And through our time together, we've learned a lot about some of the gifts that we each have, and possibly, what we have in common and how we could help each other. But there just seems to be always some obstacles or in the way. Land or the resources seem to be the common issue for all of us. But for me, it's like, oh, I'm tired of that. Like, let's just try it. Like, I'm so willing, and I know we're so willing to just, you talk about these greenhouses, you talk about these technologies that can change, but well, let's just do it. Okay, let's start in our backyard, let's do it.
You're right on.
And that's fine,
Wherever
other
you are,
people.
you gotta start.
And that's where we are
Yeah.
here. Like, this was
Yeah.
our
Everybody
call
wants to
out. Like,
start something.
we are not afraid to try.
Mhm.
We just need the technology and the people to assist, the knowledge, and people not afraid and no limitations. Let's just do it.
Mhm.
That's why we're here, and that's what my passions lie, is really living the change and being a demonstration of it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm so grateful for you coming and not knowing what you're walking into. And your presentation obviously was not the direction, it's whatever the group brings out of you. And so thank you for coming and offering yourself to this group, and I just want to learn. Like, I really want to learn what makes me tick, what I'm good at, how I can help. And a lot of my dreams and my big dreams and passions are helping. So I'm look forward to what we can learn. Like, we just got a place because we figured my parents were really helpful. I'm very blessed to have supportive parents and parents that are able to support in the way that they have. But we've tried this community thing, maybe not as long as others have, but long enough that we realized we have to take care of ourselves and rely on ourselves and do it for ourselves and be a demonstration for people to come.
Mhm.
That's the only way we're ever going to fully live our dream, even though we have no idea how to do it. Like, I grew up in the city, he grew up in the country, so he has a lot more skills in that arena than I do. And yeah, I guess I grew up kind of with the whole princess thing. Like, it made me laugh because I grew up kind of not raised to solve my own problems, but that they'll be solved for me in a very protective little thing that I never really wanted to be in. And I'm really looking forward to, like, getting out of that and facing my fears and just building my confidence in abilities and what I can do. And that's what community means to me. That's what everyone here means to me, is that support for learning.
Well, my 14-year-old daughter is a really good example of that, because she was just completely shut off from everything that could possibly harm her and also please her and give her joy. And what I've recognized in because it was almost from before her birth, we were separated. So I recognized the spirit coming, like I knew that. And so when she did move in with us, and she was 12, she recognized, oh, I have a choice. I didn't know I had a choice. And what I've noticed is that what has instilled in her, partially because we give more freedom, but partially because she has to do it on her own. She is, like, even when we took, we have to do this Empowering Ancient Ways, when we went in as a helpers to support. It's like, well, we're all going, so you're coming off school and you're coming with us. So I watched her, who can be very princessy, do incredible things. So I know.
She was actually in the video.
Yeah.
There was actually 3 or 4 of our kids in that video.
Yeah.
At different times. And when they were putting the TP up, what you didn't see, because I wouldn't let them, was, because I really don't like being videoed. I've gotten better over the years, but I really didn't like it. But I'm in the background there trying to give the TP teachings about how to set the TP up and which way for it to face and why the stories behind it,
What each
the
pole
significance, what the
represents.
poles meant and all that kind of stuff. So I'm trying to coordinate this piece of things at the same time. And so yeah, our daughters were in there. Staria was in there and Sophie was in there. Barina was in the background. You could hear her at one point gabbing away.
But I've really seen a strength that came out of
Yeah.
her, just from us being periphery the way we are. So like you're saying, being an example.
Yeah,
By,
that works.
you know, a couple of times I would say something simple like, it could be a big storm coming. And I'd be away, we'd be working. I'd come back, she's stacking wood. She's got water bottles, filling them up. I never had to tell her to do this. It's not fear. It's like she springs in action when she needs to. The rest of the time she just wants to be flighty and be silly and just have fun. But she's got the balance. When she wants to and needs to, she's there. If we were to move way, way, way out into the bush, she would choose that over the city. I know she would. But right now, she's enjoying that piece of things. So there's a balance there. And what you're talking about with the technology, it's not here to not be used. And again, it's like I call technology often electronic drugs, but it's also a tool. So you can either, you know, constantly be Facebooking and talking to everybody that way and not really connecting with people, or I want to know what's going on the other side of the planet, and there it is. It's a tool that we never had before, at least technologically. We always had it with other ways. So that's what we're moving into, is that self-reliance, but the appreciation of the cooperation of others that have a like-mindedness about things. And a good part that I've been involved in is ceremony. Ceremony gets mind out of the way and allows the fullness of who you are to come through. And the ceremonies allow you to connect directly with the spirits of the trees or the planets or whatever. So ceremony is a huge part of the movement toward having community in a different way than what we know right now. And I don't, as much as we draw a lot from Aboriginal cultures, and I have had extensive training and involvement in it, it is a model to work from. But then you add technology, and then you add this, and you add that. You don't subtract, you add. You never subtract from what already works. It's already really a positive, powerful thing. But you can add these things as long as they don't distract from. So, yeah, that's what we're all about, is we're gathering, you know, like, oh, this website's got this, and, you know, this community has learned this. So the more people that have that interaction, whether it's through technology or meeting, that grows. Everybody gains from it. And those communities that start as one family here, and one family here, and one family here, you know, friends started drawing in. I was a part of a native teaching circle for 10 years where we had people come to our house twice a week, which was a bit overwhelming at times. But that was where a lot of the experimentation of community happened, because we actually had people live in with us that weren't ready to commit to that level at all. They wanted to take the good of it, but not the work of it, or so on and so forth. So over time, you start to recognize that you have to have a criteria, but not like a written, you know, structure. More like a mental, this is what is required to be a part of this. If you are of a like mind, we will come together. You don't have to push for it. You don't have to go out there. You just call it in to you. You just call it in. You're getting gas, and for whatever reason they ask, what's that in the back of your car? Oh, that's a bow. Oh, I didn't know you made bows. Oh, well, I just live down the street. Come on over. We're doing this sort of thing together. So that's how a community is going to build. And that, to me, is the way Spirit is working at this time. It is exactly like getting out of the way temporarily and just trusting your heart and living what you can. Wherever you are, living whatever you can. I definitely see that as a part of it. So, hats off to you for sure for doing what you do, like living in a teepee, and it's like, that's awesome. And I have known other people that have done that, and they've gone back to mainstream, and that's okay, but do they lose their dreams in between? It's okay if you're living in a teepee or living in a yurt and then you end up, for whatever reason, getting a big house and having all these wonderful things. That's okay, as long as you're okay with it yourself. But if you are struggling with some kind of internal split energy about it, then don't. Because that's going to make you sick. You're not going to enjoy what you have. But if you recognize that there is no end to the abundance that there really is on this planet, as long as there is appreciation and respect, you can never run out of something. Because that's how that works.
I think that was part of our journey with seeking the community and the land externally and trying to find it, and living with packed things and realizing we don't need our things.
Right.
I just had a lot of experiences with that, and then coming to a place, where you want your dream to happen so bad that you're holding on to a situation that may not be the best for you, and not wanting to give up on the dream to, go and get a house, or, you don't want to give it up. But for us, it was like when we fully surrendered our dream,
Surrender is the key.
that this opportunity for a house came. And there's so much gratitude for it, where before we're like, I don't want to live in a box, don't want to want to build our own, you want to live out with this and that, and now it's like, oh, thank you for this, so grateful for this house.
And the gratefulness will bring you closer to the original vision eventually.
And then, that's what I find, now we have not only a root, a beginning of a root system that we can establish, but we have a community that we're building, so we have the best of both. We also have a space that we can call our own and say, we can do these things here that maybe another landowner didn't want. It's like, come, we'll do it here. We can build it here. We'll do anything here. This is what this is for.
Exactly.
For us.
That's similar to the idea that, we work on skins, so you got raw skins. Well, not everybody wants that in their backyard, right? Especially in the city. We've known people that have gone to skeets.
It's my neighbors think.
And they really had issues because they lived in the city. They had to put them on rooftops and stuff like that for them to dry out. But then they make beautiful garments out of these things because those things have always been there. And it's the appreciation of all that life gives to us, because we're all a gift to each other. And the animals in particular. I struggled with the whole idea of vegetarian versus animals until I realized, and actually one of the best examples is, long story short, in one of the Tom Brown stories when he's learning to be a young man by Stalking Wolf, his teacher, he says, you have to kill a large game animal up close to really understand the next level you have to go to. So he had to intimately know this deer, so that he loved this deer. This little deer would play, and he understood this deer, he knew everything about this deer. And then the day came that he had to kill this deer. And it was horrendous. It was a horrible, horrible experience. And he comes back, and he's angry, and he wants to give everything up because how awful he feels. And he goes to grandfather, and grandfather looks at him, and he goes, son, when you can feel the same from pulling a blade of grass from the ground, then you really have won with all things. And it's like, whoa, we've got this hierarchy that plants feel less than, and they're not as important than, and on and on are grasses, but then the plants that feed us, or that we can make things out of, are more important, or they have more spirit. No such thing. We're all part of the same amazing energy and consciousness. So that's that's a big one with a lot of more modern communities, is that whole idea that we're gonna go vegetarian, or we're gonna go, we don't wanna take life, but you're taking life at all times. You are, no matter what. To build your house, you're taking life. Like, so once you accept that and appreciate it and honor it, it opens up a freedom that you never had before.
And make space for new life.
And makes space
For
for
what
other
you've
life.
taken. Make
Always,
space for
always,
new life.
always, yeah.
There's a balance. Yeah.
That's what I find with the meat. It's like, I grew up eating meat. I enjoy the taste of meat, but unless I'm growing it myself or someone I know has grown it, I cannot eat commercial meat.
Right,
Just for the sake of how it's treated and how its life was taken.
right.
It's just, yeah. It doesn't, I mean, are you saying that if you eat commercial meat, if you're grateful for it, then that kind of balances it out?
It
or-
does, because it had to be killed
It
for
can.
people. So
Right.
if you, I'm not saying that it's better for you, because it's not. To kill a deer that has lived its life to its fullest until the moment of its death is much more invigorating food. But to take that kind of food and honor the fact that it was killed in that way, but put prayers in for the future where it won't be. In the future, we're not going to be doing this to these animals. While you're doing that, you are adding to the greater consciousness of all things, for sure.
That sort of makes me think earlier when you were talking about Linda going to Hawaii and the planes going there anyways, whether you're not
Exactly.
on the front. The animal was killed, and recently when your parents had chicken, I had some, and to be able to honor it, this was your life.
That's
and
right.
There's enough people out there that aren't respecting that life that was lived, and so it at least gives something back to it.
You talked, or we were talking a little bit about your name Shore and Bridge, and it seems to me just back to the community as I understand it today, is that we're at the beginning of building a bridge into the future as we see it coming. And when we built this house, we built it the way we built it because we see the future coming, and our intention is that it will be here for a long time. It's built to last and has the capacity to serve community, not to be a place now where everybody lives, but a place where we can gather easily.
Plant the seeds.
Yeah, plant the seeds and to support. I mean, these folks just kind of showed up, which was really quite magical to us.
We do that.
There they were. We had built, or we had planted trees at the other place. We had done other things, and then there was a time for us to stop that because of the exigencies of how you heated with wood. And we came here. But for me, it is our capacity to live together skillfully each hour, each day, not 24/7. I don't think we're there yet, or it's very hard, but to develop those skills wherever they are, and particularly in me first, and then also, like Nicole, I feel passionately about doing what I can do in the world right now, because I think there is so much pain. And then to go really clearly on what is mine to do, what are my skills, and what aren't they, and then to see how do I leverage and multiply my capacity right now. And so that's when you talked about, I like what you said, abundance of electricity. That's where my electricity is.
There you go. Yeah. I wonder if, even with discussion piece, if we should take maybe like a 5 or 10-minute break for people to feel free to go to bathrooms and, get a drink. And I see that stirring piece of, just needing that. It's not good for our bodies to sit still for that long. I'm constantly walking outside and move, stretch.
That's right. You're in physical bodies for a reason.